Hi everyone. So today we'll continue with our discussion on module 4, which is protecting data. So we already started with this module the lecture before this one, where we talked about the hardware and the software and how the internet works. So today we'll continue with our discussion more specific on security. So we will talk about computer security and we will talk about privacy later on, not in this lecture. But so there are lots of videos, so I'm going to skip the videos that are listed in those slides. So I will let you look at those slides at your own time. But I will focus on the important concepts that can help you understand the concepts and also to prepare you for the exam and the homework. So again, today we are still working on the lecture before the last one on protecting data. So computer security or cybersecurity, what do we mean by cybersecurity? So it refers to basically the state of being protected from or against any criminal or unauthorized use of electronic data. And you might have heard about the CIA Triade or three concepts. So the CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. So we are going to talk about those three concepts of security one at a time. So what we mean by confidentiality? So one key word that can help us identify whether a concept or a scenario refers to confidentiality or not is when we think about it in terms of privacy. Basically, confidentiality refers to the right to be left alone and for your data or information to be left alone and not being exposed by those who are not authorized or authenticated to be you. So again, if you think about confidentiality, think about it in terms of privacy. So there are a couple of laws such as the PHI, HIPAA, or PHI in this case refers to protected health information, or and then Social Security and FERPA and HIPAA law. And so on. So all of those laws are put in place to protect our privacy or confidentiality of our records. So the second concept is integrity. So if you want to think about one key term that kind of help us identify whether a scenario is integrity or not, referring to integrity or not, is the keyword change. If there is anything that has been changed or modified or deleted, something that has been changed, then in that case it refers to integrity. So integrity meaning that if we have our records should not be changed by any means, should not be removed, deleted, or so on, but the keyword is change. So it has to be accurate and not changed from its original status or state. So there are different concepts that refer to integrity, such as version control. So if I'm working on a software, for example, and I'm working on version 1 and then I modified it and moved it into version 2, then I put my name and I identify that this is the version. And then file permission, so user account control. And then the checksums, usually the checksums, actually I have used it personally when we were backing up server data for H&R Block. For example, if we are, let's say, installing a new server, then we will install the data or upload the data that was in the previous server into the new server, and then we will run a checksum for verifications if the data that was actually originally in the old server is actually matching the data that we put in the new server. So basically checksum makes sure or verifies the accuracy or the integrity of the data that has not been changed. And then availability from its name, that data has to be available or accessible when it is needed. So there are a couple of measures to keep availability of data, such as the redundancy, or what we call it, redundant array of independent disks. This is a virtual way of making sure that data is saved in multiple disks or in several independent disks. If one disk went bad, then the rest of the disk will have that same data, so we are not losing that data. And then fail over. So for example, we have a backup or a server that is put in place just in case the original server went bad. So then the failover or the other server can take over the transactions simultaneously without even feeling it. So, and then disaster recovery. Every organization needs to have a disaster recovery plan. For example, let's say if you are not working in a hospital and all the records are electronic, in electronic health records, and let's say the power went off, or the internet went off, or your computers were attacked by a ransomware, where you don't have access to that records and that data. So you need to have a disaster recovery plan where you can go back to paper-based records rather than electronic health records. So this is just an example of a disaster recovery plan. So another thing for making sure that availability is not affected is to have backups, and always making sure that you have backups. So now let's test your understanding of those three concepts. So let's look at the first concept here. The student wishes to change a test score. So would that be confidentiality, meaning privacy? Would that be integrity, meaning change of the record or data? Or it will be availability? So I'm sure you guessed it, and you said it is integrity because it involves change, right? So the second scenario, a virus, because those are kind of some of the scenarios that you will be tested on the exam. So let's practice here, and also you can come back to this video when you are preparing for the exam or the homework and the quiz and so on. So a virus takes down internet service for all customers. Is that privacy? Is that change, integrity? Or is that availability of the data? So as you have guessed, it is availability, right? And then employee accidentally views records of the patient. So is that confidentiality, privacy? Yeah, privacy. So it's not change. They didn't change data. It's not integrity, and it's not availability. So it is confidentiality. So your personal information is stolen and sold on the black market. So that's again privacy or confidentiality. And then a virus overheats your machine and destroys all of your files. So is that confidentiality? Is that integrity, change? Or is that availability? So in this case, it is going to be availability because it destroys all of your files, right? So you don't have access, you can't access them anymore. So again, how attackers or hackers attack the CIA or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, there are three ways that they can attack the CIA. So it is through people, through processes, and through technology. So through people, the CIA or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data can be impacted or interfered through people. For example, through phishing email, or through, let's say, fake websites, or through text messaging, the messages that you might receive that have some viruses and so on in them, that kind of basically they make you click on those links in order to download a malware or guessing your password. And then as for processes, which involves actually rules, regulations, and policies that the government or the organizations that take in place in order to protect the data that they have. And then the technology, which can include zero-day exploits or open ports. And actually we have a lot of videos to explain the technology. So we will go over them in a little bit. I will let you watch those videos to explain them in more detail. So the weakest link of all of those three components, which is people, process, and technology, weakest link is the human factor or the people factor. So let's look at, so when we talked about people and technology, or the interaction between people and technology, that was what we did in module 1, where we were using SQL and also database, and we analyzed that data and we visualized that data. So it was involving people, or those people who are using the technology, or organizational workers and technology. So that was in module 1 and 2. So people include employees, suppliers, and clients. And process includes policies, procedures, and guidelines. And technology includes the infrastructure, such as including security and mobility. So, as we said in module 1 and 2, what we learned is SQL, analyzing data and visualizing, that involved people and technology. And then in module 3, we automated data, we programmed software, and we created applications. So that was automating data. So we had policies or rules that we wanted the technology to perform for us those tasks using those rules or processes. And then today, or when we are covering module 4, which is security, actually involves all of those modules, or it involves all of those components, the people, technology, and processes. So there is a threat and control landscapes that we are going to cover. So what we mean here by a threat is a danger that can be exploited. And when we think about a control, it is a measure that can mitigate those threats. So let's look at the first combination of people and the CIA, or the threats that can be imposed on the CIA involving people. So one of the first threats that can involve people is social engineering. So you might have watched this video or this movie before. It's called Catch Me If You Can, where a person, a very smart person, impersonates other individuals, other organizations, and exploits their roles for his own personal gains. So he pretends that he's a pilot, he pretends that he is this and that in order to have access to data and access to personal gains. So that's one example of social engineering. Another example of social engineering is that if there are a couple of, let's say, jump drives that were thrown that had viruses, and they were thrown in the parking lot of an organization. And then people, when they are coming, whether they are students or employees, and then they come and they see this 10 gigabyte flash drive thrown in front of their car, they will be tempted to pick it up because it costs some money, maybe $10, maybe $5, whatever that amount. So you might be tempted to pick it up, and then you will go inside your organization and you will try to look it up. So you plug it into the computer, and then unfortunately that is a virus that might infect the whole network and compromise your network. So this is what we mean here by social engineering. So they try, or those attackers try to find ways to make you feel safe, and they exploit they exploit people in order to achieve their personal gains. So social engineering is a threat that involves people. So I'll let you watch this video where actually this guy in Catch Me If You Can talks about his experiences. So, and then phishing is another example of a threat that involves people. So phishing can be in the form of an fake email that is sent to you or to individuals, and they are asked to click on a link because they wanted to update their accounts because their account is expired or it has been deactivated, so they need to activate it, and it's all false information. They just want you to click on that link to download, so that way some of those malware can be installed on your machine and then the network at large. And then another example of phishing is fake websites. So for example, you might be sent into a website that looks like Bank of America. For example, if you are using Bank of America, it has all the details that Bank of America has. Unfortunately, they are impersonating Bank of America, and they are asking you to insert your banking information so they can exploit it. So examples of phishing, I'm sure you have received a couple of phishing emails that are sent from either they are pretended to be sent from OU IT department or so, and you might have clicked on them, maybe you have not. So from now on, you already know that we should not click on those. And another example of phishing is called spear phishing, which is customized emails or fake emails or websites that are targeted at you. For example, since you are an OU student, so that will be targeted at you as an OU student. So it is very customized to you. So that's what we mean here by spear phishing. So this is an example of spear phishing. It came actually from an actual employee at OU, and it also has kind of the, as you can see here, we have the banner or the image of the logo of OU, and here it's asking you to update your email. So this is spear phishing. So you have also heard about different cases that have happened. I'll let you read about them at your own time. So what could happen when you click a link in a phishing email? Actually, what happens is that you may have just instructed your computer to download malicious software or maliciousware, or we call it malware, or a virus, or a keylogger that keeps track of all the keys that you log or the keys that you press in a log. And then in instances, if you enter into your banking information, for example, they can actually identify that through your key logs. And then we have the ransomware, where it compromises all the files within your computer, for example, especially if you are sensitive organizations such as a physician's office or a hospital or a bank, and then they compromise all of that data, and then they ask you to pay a ransom in order to have access to this data. And then the distributed denial of service attack. So I will let you go over those videos that I have provided to you here, which explains what we mean by a virus, what we mean by a malware, and so on. And this is a very good example of keylogger. He will show you how keylogging takes place in a real example. And then the ransomware, I will let you watch this video, and you will understand what we mean by a ransomware, and you will see a real live example. And then the zombie attack, the botnet, and denial of service attack. I will let you also watch those videos, and the password, which is an interesting video. So I'll let you watch this guy. So why our passwords are in such high demand is because data is hackers' currency. And you will see this is some of the examples what your credit card information are worth. So the worth of your credit card information can go from, in the black market, from 85 cents to $30, and so on. Email account can go from $1 to $20 in the black market. So this data that we might sometimes take for granted and we give it away to some organizations, some people are out there to make money out of our data. So this is just kind of to let you know. There are also websites that are for sale if they have an access to them. So some of the researchers here at OU came up with this philosophy for training, which is stop, think, and act when it comes to cyber training or cyber attacks. So when you receive a phishing email, for example, so their recommendation is that you stop, don't react right away. So stop and think. So stop, check the links, and are they legitimate? So you can hover over them, but don't click on them, just hover the mouse over them, and then you might be able to see the exact link where it is coming from. And then never respond to any email that is requesting some private information about you, such as your username or password. And then think about what is the context of this message that you have received it. Does it really make sense? And last but not least is you will need to act on it. So you will need to delete it or send that into OUIT in order to mitigate that and take care of it. So this is what I mean here. So you can hover over the links and don't click on them, just hover over the links, and then you will see the exact URL and where it is coming from. So software updates, so make sure in order to mitigate or to save yourself from those attacks, it is always important that your software is always up to date. For example, whether you are using, let's say, iPhone or using Android phones, you should always upgrade that software. Or you are using, let's say, a Mac and they have iTunes updates, so you should always update the software and always have antivirus software. And a free, lightweight antivirus software is provided by Microsoft, which is Microsoft Security Essentials. I have provided to you the link here. If you don't have it, install it. It is free and it is reasonable. So let's look at this question. If you have a Mac, do you think, or a Linux operating system, are you immune to this malware? No, actually you are not. So all computers are vulnerable. So examples of antivirus options, they are provided to you here. So passwords. So there are rules of thumb of how passwords should be selected. So think about length, not complexity. So make sure that your password is long enough for people to guess, so that way they can't guess it. But if you are using only one or two words for it, they might be able to guess it. So at least 12 to 15 characters, and keep it weird, something that is not easy to figure it out. And don't bunch up your special characters. For example, let's think about it from another perspective. Is, let's say that if your favorite actor is, let's say, Stewie, don't use Stewie in your password. And never double dip. For example, if you are using a password for OU, let's say for Canvas, use another password for Google, email, and so on. So, and change once a year. So every year change your password and layer it up. Sometimes some websites provide us with layering up. For example, you can use a password and then a security question. So if you have that chance, do it. So now let's think about this. Is Boomer Sooner a strong password? No, it's not. So you already guessed that one. So I have provided to you here this link where you can test whether a password is strong or not, and how long it is going to take hackers or attackers to guess your password. So let's click on this guy, and here, purple monkey dishwater. That's kind of how weird it is, and it is long, and it's very hard for people to guess what it is. So now I provided to you this. This is a website. Let's say that I wanted to put my first name, my last name as my password. So remember, don't put your actual password here. This is just kind of for testing. So actually it will take the hacker one day to guess my password if I put it as my first name, my last name. So let's say that I will put Stewie. 300 microseconds. So you get the idea. What about boomer sooner boomer, or boomer sooner? 4 weeks, right? Sooner boomer, 4 weeks. Well, but still you get the idea here. They are not, those are not good examples of passwords. So this is an example here of a website that can help you identify how safe your password is. So from all those passwords here, purple monkey dishwater is the best. It will take actually millions or thousands or hundreds of years for people to guess this one. So never enter any of your current password into this link. So some people recommend that you might need to use password manager. So it's up to you. I personally will not use it. What if it gets compromised, then my passwords are exposed? So now let's look at the processes or the threats of processes to CIA. So processes, what we mean by processes refers to guidelines, policies, and business rules that are put into place to protect data. So an example of a process or a business policy or a rule is that policy requiring privacy filters on hospital receptionist screens. So you might have seen those. Those are just examples. Or passwords to be changed every 3 months. Or let's say policy requiring machines to be locked after 1 minute of non-use. So those are just examples. I will let you go over them and read them. And then controls. So what are the controls that processes can provide? So you should always not set it and forget it. So if you have a business policy, you should not just say it and leave it there unchecked. You should always audit it and make sure that people are following those policies within the organization. So perform, schedule, and ad hoc testing for the compliance. So undercover boss, you might have watched this show, but it helps a lot. So as a manager, try to impersonate someone or try to hide your personality and see how people are following those policies that were established within your organization. And have inside or outside examiners and training onboarding. So when you hire new people, you should always train them on security and cybersecurity and the policies that you have already established, and refresh programs. So let's look at those examples here and see, test your understanding about people, process, and technology. So spear phishing attempt. So remember when we say people includes social engineering, phishing, and so on. So I'll let you go back and review those slides kind of to remember which is which. So people, processes, and technology. So spear phishing attempt, is that part of people, processes, or technology? So that will be part of representing people. And then rules indicating what websites an employee may view. So this is rule, that is a process, right? And social engineering, we already talked about. Social engineering is involving people. And encryption backup, that's technology. And then policy requiring, so anything policy, that is a process. So I'll let you watch this video that explains zero-day exploit. If you couldn't, let's say it doesn't open, just double click on it several times and then it will open. So other tactics, so that includes denial of service attacks and distributed denial of service attacks, and I have provided you with videos to explain those in detail. So SQL injection. This is an example of SQL, since you have already learned SQL, what we mean by SQL. So let's say you went to a website and they are asking you for a username and password, and you wanted to test the vulnerability of that website, so you inserted your user ID as 105 and then or 1 = 1. So remember the or, we said it should be either one should be true for it to be true. So if we say 105 was false, but 1 equals 1 is always true, then you will get all the usernames for the people in that database. So this is what, and this is how it is translated. When you put that, it actually instructs the system or creates a select statement that selects username or user ID, name, password from users, where user ID equals 105 or 1 equals 1. So this is just kind of to give you an example of SQL injection. So again, technical failures are number one cause of data loss is actually accidental deletion. So employees, they might delete a file or a record by mistake. So again, all hardware are prone to fail at some point, whether it is based on a disaster such as fire, flood, or hurricane, or just by time, because everything has a life cycle, it has a beginning and an end. Hardwares are also the same. So what are the controls that we can take for technology not to impact the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability? So number one is update. So update your software and also update your antivirus software. And use encryption whenever possible. So encryption is a process or a way that can make your data unreadable or inaccessible by middle person or by people. So for example, when I'm using my WhatsApp, it's actually one of the apps that is encrypted. So whenever I write a message, let's say to one of my friends through WhatsApp, I can read it in my end. But when it is in transit, when it is sent through the internet, it gets encrypted. And there is a key or an algorithm that transforms the text, the readable English text that I have text, into gibberish kind of looking chicken scratches characters. Nobody can read them. And then as soon as it arrives to the person or the friend that I sent them to, the WhatsApp encrypts or actually decrypts that that message using algorithm and key, and then it becomes English as the same way that I intended to send it. So this is what we mean here by encryption. So backup, you should always back up and use backup solutions, and you might have been using Dropbox or OneDrive, and OneDrive is provided to us for free from OU. It provides us with 1 gigabyte or almost 1 terabyte, but you can double check. But we have very large storage that is provided through OneDrive for us. And then some of you might have used Google Drive for backups. This is for personal use, but if you are an organization, you might think about Carbonite or iCloud or cloud computing solutions. Redundancy, so this is kind of very similar to the example we talked about failover. So we can have access to this server through core switch 1, just in case that this core switch 1 failed, then it automatically can switch to the core switch 2, and so on. So you get the idea what we mean here by that. So that was all that I wanted actually to cover for in this lecture, and then in the last lecture we will go over privacy and then wrap up. So I will talk to you soon.